Students, when we study the model of supply and demand, Marshall's scissors, we have to apply our critical thinking. Yes, it is a very attractive model. It allows us to separate these two factors, supply and demand, and observe when they move what the result will be. For example, an increase in demand, a change in the determinants of demand, shifting the curve of demand to the right when there is an increase or to the left when there is a decrease, we can predict the effect of that on the equilibrium price. A shift in supply, a change in supply due to disruption in supply, maybe a change in supply because of improved technology or innovation. Well, we can maybe predict the effects of that on the price and the quantity of the products or services we're studying. But we have to recognize many issues that disrupt this whole model. For example, can prices really change so easily? Not always. Yes, in some markets, like the stock market, the commodities market, some auction type markets, you may have an example of that in eBay, you see that prices do adjust quite a bit. But do they adjust instantly? It's rare. How about the transaction cost involved in changing the prices? In most stores, if you have to change prices, you have to relabel the products. If you have catalogs that were printed, you have to print new catalogs to change prices. Yes, we do see that stores offer items on sale. Very often they offer 10% off. They have coupons. They have other methods to change prices. But it's not easy for them to change prices very frequently. There would be confusion. Customers might be upset about the continuing change in prices. Also, many stores and companies try to do price discrimination. They try to price the same thing different for different people. For example, seniors may pay different prices than adults. Students may pay a different price than children. And why is that? They want to be able to sell the product to as many people as possible for the highest price possible, and they will try to discriminate. Some people that have a coupon may be able to get the same product for a cheaper price if they're willing to spend the time to find and clip that coupon, or waiting in line sometimes as a standby, or buying something at the last minute. If they're willing to do so, it's very inconvenient. Well, then they will pay maybe a lower price. That way the company can sell the product at the highest price to those that don't want to be inconvenienced, but those that are willing to wait in line or stand by, those will pay less, and the company will therefore be able to rake in the maximum amount of revenue. But let's look at many other situations of market failure. Are prices really flexible? No. Let's look at wages. The labor market. Wages cannot change so fast. It would cause all kind of social issues, accusations of discriminations. There is labor laws that prevent wages from changing all the time. There is also the minimum wage. Now, if there was really freedom of adjusting wages in the labor markets, maybe there would be no unemployment. Because if there were people unemployed, logically, the wages should go down, because that is a surplus of labor, and go down until everybody is employed. That is the theory of the free market applied to the labor market. But can that really happen? And how would people feel if they were to be paid measly wages that really don't allow them to survive? That can cause violence. So the government steps in and sets a minimum wage that protects people that may be unable to protect themselves from the employers and could be exploited, maybe because they don't speak the language, maybe because they're too young and naive. Well, the minimum wage protects them. And some people think that the minimum wage causes some unemployment, maybe youth unemployment. That may be true, but it remains to be seen if really the minimum wage would be better eliminated. Probably that's not so recommended. Let's talk about other factors, externalities in education. pollution, many things that really the government has to supply because the market doesn't supply that adequately. Would the market, the free market, would they provide for national parks? It's doubtful. How about roads? Now we know that there is private roads, toll roads, even in Colorado. But most roads would not be practical if you had to pay a toll every few minutes. It would be impossible to drive around. It would just not be practical, and you could not exclude cars, let's say in any kind of roads near the city. How would you exclude cars from coming in and out or register a toll? You could do it electronically, and in some cities they are charging now congestion toll. So if you are in a center of a city, you have to pay, and maybe electronically you have to pay a fee, but these are still systems that are very difficult to implement. So we find that government usually provides for public transportation, roads, and many other type of services like waste removal, where there is a problem and the market will not provide the right quantity of product of service. Even though we know that when the government steps in, there can be other problems. Those are called government failure as compared to market failure. Why failure? Well, the government is not always so efficient in providing the service and products. There could be a lot of waste. There could be a lot of other distortions, regulation. Sometimes there is too much regulation and it can make it difficult for the free market to operate. But on the other hand, too little regulation can also cause many problems. We know that there is potential for fraud, potential for abuse. Companies that are too powerful may take advantage of their customers. There is another problem. It's called asymmetric information. In some markets, consumers don't have a lot of information about the service. For example, how can consumers decide on surgical procedure, operations? How can they argue about the price of an operation with a surgeon or a doctor? That's really not possible to do. The consumer cannot really know what he needs. He cannot understand the diagnosis like a doctor can. And the same when going to a lawyer. How can you really assess the legal matters at hand? Can you argue with the lawyer about how much he wants to charge you? No, there is a problem of asymmetric information. Also in the used car markets. You don't know as much about the used car as the used car dealer or the used car seller knows. And how can you be protected? The government sometimes steps in and protects people in different ways. For example, doctors have to be board certified. Lawyers, if they operate improperly, they can be disbarred. Used car dealers can also lose their license. That's a way that the government tries to control these situations of asymmetric information. When there is too much power, a company has too much power, too much market power, the government may come in and regulate. For example, utilities, electricity, gas. There is only one provider. Well, there is a public service commission that controls and regulates that utility company. Otherwise, the consumer would not be protected and he would lose most of its consumer surplus as the prices would be raised and raised and raised without any limit. You cannot allow the one company monopoly, the public utility, to set its own prices without any kind of regulation. And that shows you the many situations of market failure where the market doesn't work as beautifully, as smoothly as we think it would.